This is pretty cool. So this is a prototype I'm working on. Now this is a very rough prototype, but I wanted to share this with you guys. And the reason I do is because a couple of videos ago, I shared a prototype with you and asked for some feedback, and you guys gave me some of the greatest feedback I've ever seen. So I want to show you what I'm up to, walk you through my thought process, show you the things I'm going to change on this and how we're going to do it a little differently. And then I would love to get your feedback and you tell me what you think, suggestions, changes, things that maybe I haven't thought of. That would be absolutely wonderful. Now this isn't a prototype I'm going to eventually sell or anything. This is something I'm building for my shop. But if there's enough interest, I'll definitely make the plans available for people who are interested in making one for themselves. So before I tell you what this is, maybe there's a couple of you guys that can guess what it is. Now, it has the circular head on it and it has dynamic legs or dynamic supports. So anytime I turn this a certain way towards the opening, the legs go out that direction. And if I turn it the other direction, the same thing happens. So what do you think it is? For those of you who may have been struggling to figure out what it is, it's a device for flipping heavy sheet goods. It's literally that simple. It could be for flipping a really heavy slab tabletop, a big slab. In our case, we move some really heavy HDPE sheets around here, and sometimes we need to rotate them over. So we've designed this so it's about the same height as our CNC. It sits a little bit below the height of the CNC when it's in its actuated position, if you will. And then we can slide material on it, flip it over, and then slide material off. I think probably the best way to show you guys is just to show you guys. Now, you'll have to bear with us. We only have this one small slab in here, and we're going to use it. It's a 104-pound poplar slab that's 24 inches wide, 10 feet long. And it's only 104 pounds. So flipping it by hand would be pretty easy. But let's say we had 2 or 3 of these and it was thicker and a harder, denser wood. It could get as heavy as 3 and sometimes even 400 pounds. And that is even with 2 healthy bodies hard to flip over. Okay, so before I show you how I intend to load all this, let me explain a couple of things about this real quick. First of all, this is just a prototype and everything on here is wood on wood, including the little bearing blocks I have that this is riding on. So it's a pretty rough turn and it's a little jarring. And right now I'm just manually turning this by hand. This will be motorized with a slow revolution motor. Revolution! That will be just basically controlled by a remote like this. So you put the material on, you slide it, and you flip it over and you turn it off. So they do make machines that do this. There are these really big machines that cost a fortune, and then once they turn the slab over, they have to turn around, and it takes a lot of space and a lot of money. And I want to make this small, compact thing. This is bigger than the actual finished product will be, that when you're done with it, you can just kind of slide it out of the way. So in order to load the material, I want to be able to use my lift system that I did in a couple of videos ago. This is a vacuum lift system that attaches to pretty much any material that we use and then load it onto here. But that would be a little bit tricky on some of the narrower slabs if the top was in the way. So what I've done is I made the halves so they detach. In this case, we're going to take the top half off. That detaches. And then I could use my lift system to pick up the slab and set it in place. And then I can put this back on. Now, right. So we pulled this back away from the CNC a little bit so you can kind of see what's going on. Now we're going to pretend like this thing is motorized and the clamps already fell out when we moved it, so we're just going to leave them out. But when we're moving the real thing, we're going to have padding in here and a clamping system to hold it in place because we definitely don't want any damage, especially if we've done an epoxy pour on a tabletop or we're towards the end of a tabletop build. We just don't want to ding it up, even if it weighs 400 pounds. So I need you to pretend like this system is motorized and it's not all jarry and working on wooden bearings and big fat gears that are way too not cut perfectly. So use your imagination. Let's turn this one over. Motor sounds. All right, so now that we have our slab flipped over, we move this back up next to the CNC machine so you guys can kind of see how we intend to use it. Now I can just slide the top off and use the vacuum lift to put this back on the CNC. So we've established what this thing does. We know that we have to have the inside of this padded and some kind of clamping system to clamp down the slab or whatever we're moving around. We know that when we turn it over, we can take the top off on either side, and that we're going to make these a little bit lighter weight so they're easier to handle. Now, what the heck is up with these giant dynamic legs that come way out when we turn them? Well, they don't need to come out that far. They really only need to come out about 20 inches or so. But because I designed this before I put the dynamic, support legs on, there can only be one gear between the rack and the circular gear thingamabob, because I want them to go the direction that the slab is. Or I'd have to put 2 more gears, and once you start doing that, you start adding gears, you start adding a lot of, friction to the system. And with a bunch of weight on it, it's gonna add more friction. So when I redesign this, I'm gonna make the whole gear system smaller, so they only come out about 20 inches, 24 inches on either side. I hope that made sense. Now, the reason they come out that far is, let's say I have a 60-inch top one direction. So maybe it's 8 feet this way and it's 60 inches that way. I know that's unrealistic, but it could happen. Well, if I have a 60-inch top coming out, this is only 30 inches deep. So that center weight's gonna be right here. And when we start talking about motorizing and moving things over, it could very easily tip forward if these legs weren't sticking out, kind of supporting that weight. And rather than having legs sticking out both sides, it made more sense to make the legs dynamic. So when this turns, the legs go out to the side that's supporting. So if you think about it, and you have a big giant piece in here, and it weighs 400 pounds, there's 200 pounds just hanging in midair. So it could fall forward. That's why the dynamic legs. Now, they're way oversized. They really only need to come out like 20 inches, like we said. And that's gonna take a little bit of engineering, but we're gonna reduce that so the legs don't come out that high. Now, the next thing I wanna do is make this adjustable for height. And we can do that by just putting legs on the corner and kicks on each corner of this. So there's 4 adjustments. But that would make it so we can lift it up to tabletop height or bring it down to like the CNC bed height. And we really can't go a whole lot lower than 28, 30 inches. That's about as low as we can go. But if you have a lift system, you can literally, and you're working on something on the floor, you can pick it up on the floor, set it on here, close it, turn it over. So aside from those details, that's really where I'm at with this build. We're gonna motorize it. We wanna keep the dynamic legs so we don't have, 28 or 24 inches sticking out on both sides. We're gonna put a clamp system in here to hold it in place. I'd like to work on how they come together so it's a little bit easier to pull them apart, get them apart on both sides, and to make it lighter. I think that about covers what I want to do with this system. So this is what I wanted to show you guys. And if you have suggestions or ideas or thoughts about this whole thing, I would really love to hear them. This is the build. This is what I'm up to. This is something that I'm definitely going to take to fruition. It may take some time, but we need something like this here in the shop for flipping big, heavy sheet goods. And I think there's probably some other people out there that could use it as well, especially folks that are doing tabletops. Now, a little secret about tabletop businesses. In my 30 years, I have seen more successful woodworking businesses just making tabletops than I have in any other business, cabinetry or signs or any of that stuff. That is the one business that has the biggest chance of succeeding. So for folks that are doing that, I think something like this would come in really handy. I'm pretty happy with the design so far, but there's some things I know I need to change about it. And I'd really like your feedback, because I'm sure, the whole hive mind thing, that there's some really good ideas out there that I haven't thought of. And if you guys want to put those down in the comment section, I'd love to hear them. That is really just so cool. I love the whole dynamic leg aspect of this project. Anyways, I look forward to reading your comments and seeing what you have to say and your thoughts and ideas. Really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video, and we'll see you in the next one.